Well, the Ashes are in full swing on both the men's and women's side, of course. We've had an absolute cliffhanger of a first test, all to play for on the remaining four. And to discuss all this, it's once again time to take a little trip off to the boundary. Yes, people, once again, welcome to the channel and welcome to the Off the Boundary show. Hannah will be joining us in a few minutes, but obviously he's got some work to take care of. But for now, though, you're in the company of yours truly, and I'm just going to get a few things ready, do a little bit of housekeeping, as it were, and I will be happy to start talking. But for now, let's pay tribute to the wonderful people in the chat. Chelsea fan, always a huge fan of the channel. Big up to you. Thank you for joining in. Another reminder from him to keep hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Please, by all means, do so. We're doing a lot of excellent work over here. And especially branching out to different sports. It's wonderful to be doing a lot more cricket-related shows. If you enjoyed the quiz show yesterday, then that's all the more wonderful. And hopefully we're encouraging a few more fans to try and join a stream very soon. I might be getting a fan, Prasanna Balakrishnan from PB Talks, to come over here whenever he possibly can, if the timing suits him, of course. He is, of course, based all the way in Dallas, which is half a world away from where I am. And so at this particular time, he might be working. So a weekend stream might be the best thing for him. It is what it is. And if there are any of you who would like to join, do please drop Hanno and myself a message on Instagram, and we will look to try and add you on as a guest. And Chelsea fan coming and saying, if Australia wins the second test, England will find it hard to come back from this. And you're absolutely right, because it will be hard to look back in memory as to finding a team which was able to win a 5-test Ashes series after losing the first two. It would mean that every test would, of course, have to have a result. And, of course, Australia only need to draw this series to retain the Ashes. So they are, of course, in the driver's seat. And England are going to have to do a lot of work to try to catch up. New subscriber, I believe, Hassan's Tech Review. Big up, chat, and big up to you. Thank you for joining in. And you're asking me what's up. Well, the ceiling's up in my room. An awful joke, but you get that sort of corny humor from me. Sorry about that, but good to have you on. Yes, come on, England, of course. Time for the Aussies to win the second test. They deserve it. Well, I will beg to differ. And Stark absolutely carried them on the verge of losing. I'll tell you something about Mitchell Stark. We're going to discuss him, obviously, because that's going to sort of segue into the preview for the second test. When he played in the World Test Championship, and I think you have a point, he did look rather expensive. And the thing about some of these left-arm seamers that have come out of Australia is that when they're accurate and sharp, they are absolutely lethal. The only problem is they tend to bowl either to the left or either to the right. And when their line's not right, it all goes to you know what. But obviously, I'm not going to swear on Hanno's channel, but it is what it is. But we are going to talk about him a little bit later, and he will have a role to play. And a huge fan of Steve Smith. I'll tell you what, he's a fine, fine batsman and will go down as one of the greatest ever, alongside a certain Mr. Joseph Edward Root from England, of course. But he never should have been awarded the vice-captaincy after his role in that Sandpapergate scandal. Obviously, while he and David Warner have been welcomed back with open arms, Cameron Bancroft has pretty much been a sacrificial lamb. Granted, maybe his form hasn't quite merited a recall, but you don't just, toss him aside like yesterday's, green thigh curry. And I say that because obviously the presence of coconut in that curry means that it is quite perishable. Yep, welcome to the channel. And Australia can clutch. I experienced this as a Bangladeshi supporter. I'll tell you what, Bangladesh obviously are capable of playing some really, really, really fine cricket and doing a lot better, rising up in the rankings. But I think they still seem to depend a bit too much on Shakib Al Hassan, Tamim Iqbal, and Mushfiq Rahim. And okay, listen, all right. Enough's enough. Enough's enough. Okay. Any of you in the chat who are going to engage in any of this sort of stuff, keep it to yourselves and do not even think of putting it on a public platform. I want both of you to apologize to each other ASAP. There's not going to be anything, any nonsense going on over here. Do you understand? Good. Now, we will obviously take a look at start. What we're going to do is obviously we're going to start everything with a review of the first Ashes test, which took place at Edgbaston in Birmingham. And it was an absolute cliffhanger, of course, which the Aussies went on to win by 2 wickets. And I'm going to take this opportunity to try and share the scoreboard on Cricinfo right now. Just see if I can get to that. Yep. Nicely loaded. And once we present this, I appreciate that, but make sure you two reconcile with one another. Chelsea fan, Hassan, both of you need to shake hands. Hassan's VAR box. Aussies do know how to pull off a comeback. That they do. Yep, they do. They do know how to pull it off. I got you there. So, of course, obviously, we are going to take a little bit of a review of the first test and talk about a lot of the things that happened. And obviously, we've got the scorecard right over here. We will find out the details, obviously, just starting by finding out who... yeah, so... details of the match. It took place obviously at Edgbaston in Birmingham. England won the toss and Ben Stokes elected to bat first, hoping to try and set a big total and hope that the Aussies would have trouble chasing it down. And we are going to get into the first point of controversy over here, but we will take a look at the scorecard. Obviously, Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett didn't have the best of opening partnerships, with Duckett getting out for not quite a duck, but certainly rather breezy 12 off 10. And Crawley also getting out for 61 off 73. So you can see that Bazball obviously has an aim to try and dominate the bowlers, throw them off balance, and make sure that bad balls are put away. And, obviously there is some talk about Bazball just being a glorified T20 strategy, but the fact is, it's a sign of intent more than anything else. And in this particular test, we saw even a guy like Joe Root showing some intent in the form of an attempted reverse sweep in England's second innings, which really told them, you know what, we used to be afraid of you, but now we're not. Just try and come at us, if you will. And a 70-run partnership for the second wicket between Crawley and Ollie Pope looked quite good, but then obviously Pope got out earlier than desired, and Crawley also didn't last too long. And it was really, really amazing to see that, with the exception of Ben Stokes, who had a rare failure getting out for 1, practically every batsman, with the exception of Ollie Robinson, had strike rates in the 70s and above. And even Ollie Robinson, of course, had a strike rate of above 50. So you could see that this is pretty much uncharted territory. But, of course, losing 8 wickets didn't really help. And the star of the innings, obviously, was Joe Root, who was able to play a lot more circumspectively in this innings, but still managed to maintain a fine strike rate. And he was even able to smack Nathan Lyon and company for 4 big sixes to go with his 7 fours in his breezy innings of 118. He looked set to go for 150, and Bairstow as well, giving him some wonderful company with a brilliant run of ball 78. He deserved a century, only to... try and charge Nathan Lyon and end up getting stumped by the wicketkeeper Alex Carey, as did Moeen Ali. And Stuart Broad obviously didn't last too long, being bowled by Cameron Green. And so you could see that without reaching the psychological barrier of 400, the decision to declare did raise a lot of eyebrows. Obviously, Ben Stokes had the idea that by declaring a little bit earlier than expected, with with about half an hour's of play left, enough time for maybe 4 overs to be bowled, it would have been an opportunity to try to snag a wicket or two. But with the pitch not really showing too many demons, Um, one would have expected that Ben Stokes would have allowed his batsman to play on, get to around about 400, over 400, maybe 430 or even 450, and then declare overnight, expecting the batsman to have to face the difficulty of batting first on that pitch from the very beginning, when there could have been some demons in that. And I firmly believe that it cost England somewhere close to 50 runs, which could have made a difference. But this is something, obviously, that Ben Stokes will learn as he goes, as he continues to enjoy his captaincy, which has brought about some terrific rewards. But as we will see, this and the New Zealand test, where they lost by 1 run, will be an example of how, you know, might have been a close defeat, but it's still a defeat. And you need to sometimes know how to display a little bit of pragmatism at times. As far as the bowling is concerned, for Australia, Cummins was wicketless and not very effective. Josh Hazelwood did quite well with a couple of wickets, one of Ben Duckett earlier on, and then came back, of course, to snare the big wicket of the England captain. Scott Boland also surprisingly very expensive, but he still took a wicket, not quite able to pick up from where he left off in the World Test Championship final. But the star of the innings was obviously Nathan Lyon with 4 for 149. Every single one of these bowlers went for over 4 and over, and obviously Boland went for over 6 and over. Lyon and Green went for over 5. Obviously, England had the intent, so you just wonder whether maybe the declaration was ill-advised. They should have been allowed to score a few more runs if they could, and then just declare overnight and have a first crack at Australia in the morning. As it stands, both Warner and Khawaja survived that 4-over spell and went on to start the next day's proceedings. Warner didn't last very long. Once again, another loss versus Stuart Broad in that personal battle with him. But and then, of course, Marnus Labuschagne getting out for a golden duck, a thick edge to Johnny Bairstow, and Stuart Broad was literally on fire at that time. But and of course, Stephen Smith didn't last very long, being taken by Ben Stokes. But an excellent partnership of 81 between Usman Khawaja and Travis Head, who made a nice breezy 50 off 63 balls, sort of helped stabilize things a little bit. Another partnership of 72 between Khawaja and Cameron Green quite helped. And a big partnership of 118 between Khawaja and Carey was really the innings which gave Australia a great deal of meat to their bones, and really made sure that they weren't going to they would either just surpass England's total or else not be too far behind. Carey, of course, contributing with a fine innings of 66 from 99 balls with 10 fours and a 6. And Pat Cummins also chipping in with, of course, there was a period when after Khawaja got out, a few wickets were lost quite cheaply, but in the interim, Cummins was able to smite 3 big sixes in his innings of 38, and we will find out later just how good he was with the bat. And Cummins, of course, was the last man out, sort of popping one up to Ben Stokes over at mid-wicket. I mean, not exactly mid-wicket, but certainly the the sort of square leg position. And as it was, Australia finished the innings 7 runs behind England's total, with Usman Khawaja being the star of the show. A brilliant innings of 141, where he really made the most of his time at the crease. Unlucky to be bowled by Ollie Robinson, who finished with 3 wickets for his pains. Stuart Broad had 3. James Anderson coming in at first change was a little bit ineffective, only 1 wicket for 53. And the spinner Moeen Ali also on his recall to the England Test team, chipping in with 2 wickets of his own, taking him to 197 wickets. He does, of course, have the possibility of ending this series with the magical double of 3,000 runs and 200 wickets, but he will probably have to be brought back into the team ASAP if and when his finger heals. And we will talk about his finger soon. So you can see that the middle order basically were doing the job of consolidating the innings after the failures of Warner, Smith, and Labuschagne, and caughgt, continuing his brilliant purple patch, was playing circumspectively with responsibility, and he also wasn't afraid to smack the spinner Ali and Root out of the park whenever he felt like it. Root, of course, would start with the ball in the second innings and was quite economical here with 15 off 7 with 3 maidens. And as a result, it almost looked as though the declaration was a little bit vindicated, but still, you would think that with Warner and caughgt surviving those 4 overs, it really made no difference. And they could have instead stayed to get to the magic 400 number and maybe get to 420, 430, maybe even 450 the way they were batting. So Stokes will look back on that. Once we see the second innings, of course, of England, Crawley and Duckett had a pretty poor start. Duckett getting out for 19, Crawley getting out for even less than that. And obviously Cummins wasn't quite able to find his line or length in the first innings, but he started to get his act together. And also bowling Ollie Pope out. Joe Root and Harry Brook with very breezy innings of 46 each, joint top scorers again. But Root's newfound exuberance got the better of him when he tried to charge Nathan Lyon and ended up getting stumped again. And Brook also being caught by Labuschagne off the bowling of Nathan Lyon, who also got another danger man in Johnny Bairstow, and also took the wicket of Nathan Lyon. And so no real big contributions, 340s, and that's really it. And you could say that this was the innings where the Aussies really gave themselves the belief that they could win a 50-run partnership for the third wicket and a 52-run partnership for the fourth wicket was really pretty much as good as it got in terms of big partnerships, nothing much else in between. A few hits from the lower order for 4s and 6 from Moeen Ali, but nothing really substantial. And in the end, England were all out for 273 at a rate of 4 and over. But again, some of the shots that were played to get the batsman out were not really the best. Of course, this time the captain, Ben Stokes, did come good with an innings of 43 and looked set for more, only to be dismissed by his counterpart. And 4 wickets apiece for the captain, Cummins, and the experienced Nathan Lyon. A wicket for Josh Hazelwood and 1 for Scott Boland. Both Hazelwood and Boland were quite expensive. Cameron Green, of course, also being hit for 6 off 2 overs. His part-time bowling wasn't really that successful. But Australia did what they needed to do, and now came the second innings, where Warner actually did get into his groove quite nicely and started hitting quite well with 36 off 57. But sadly, unfortunately, he got out to Ollie Robinson again. Robinson, this time not Broad, but Robinson, caught behind by Bairstow. caughgt still held the innings together at the top, but was 7th man out with an innings of 65 off 197. Very, very circumspect in many ways. And this, of course, was taken to the final day of play. So you can imagine just how riveting a test match this was. At times you wondered whether Australia would either bat to try and save the game or whether they would try and win. And I think Cummins was smart enough to know that with wickets falling around him, you either try and win the match or die trying, basically. And another failure for Labuschagne, another failure for Smith. Boland, the night watchman, doing some pretty good work, seeing things to the end of the penultimate day's play, only to end up getting out not too long afterwards. And those 3 wickets for Broad being caught by Bairstow really started to break the back of the Australian innings. And when Travis Head got out for 16 and Cameron Green didn't really last too long, it was just in many ways a matter of time for England. You would think that they would end up, just knocking them all over. A 49-run partnership between Travis Head and Cameron Green was really the best they could have hoped for they could do at the time. But then with Lyon and Cummins at the crease, Cummins pretty much took the initiative, smacking Joe Root for a couple of big sixes. Vroad had, in fact, snared the big wicket of Alex Carey, who was capable of really taking the game away from England, but a very sharp return catch. Not the best shot to play by Alex Carey. And when Carey was gone at 192 for 6, with Australia 90 runs short of their target, you thought it was about time. But Pat Cummins proved that he was no slouch with the bat and was able to build on his first inning score of 38 with a match-winning score of 44. And with Nathan Lyon for company doing his bit, they ended up knocking the runs off bit by bit with a combination of singles and boundaries. And the strategy of Ben Stokes to try and delay taking the new ball and then trying to bounce out Cummins and Lyon proved futile, because the way Scott Boland was able to play as a night watchman, leaving the balls quite well and not really going for them, was pretty much proof that the strategy of bowling, trying to bounce them out, was never going to work. And with the ball starting to it might not have swung very much, but the way Broad was able to almost induce false strokes with some of the lower order batsmen, it wouldn't have been a bad idea to take the new ball immediately and then just ask Broad and Robinson to, zoom in on them and make sure you maintain that sort of a line. Because the biggest problem with, trying to adopt a short ball strategy is that when that ball is coming at you, so you can see it coming at you, you have an option of being able to just leave it behind and not really worry about how you look. And obviously, the lower order batsman would have been coached very well when it came to leaving the short ball and picking the shots to play. But when you pitch the ball up and try and induce the false stroke, you would more often than not get a few wickets. And it certainly proved that way when I think when Broad, for example, was bowling, he was able to create a lot of doubt in the batsman's mind, and that's sort of how it proved that way. But back to the scorecard, obviously Cummins' innings of 44 proved to be very, very crucial indeed, and with Lyon for support, they managed to get a brilliant partnership of 55 unbroken, which took them through with very few balls left in the day. And so, at one particular stage, one of three options were possible. It could have been a win for England, a win for Australia. It could even have been a tied game. But with Cummins steering the ship and Lyon providing able support, lion-hearted support, it must be said, certainly was no dandelion, as I remember saying on commentary with Hanno, they ended up getting through. And Anderson going wicketless obviously was a bit of a concern. He was economical, but not quite able to get the ball to swing as much as he would like. And he did voice his concerns about the Edgbaston pitch. But Stuart Broad, once again, outstanding with 3 wickets. And obviously he threatened to wrest the initiative away. And the battle between him and Cummins and Lyon was certainly one which... was almost for the ages, a little bit like Andrew Flintoff in his sort of like in that series of 2005 against the likes of Ricky Ponting and Michael Clarke and company. Just classic gladiator-style cricket. You didn't want to miss that. 2 wickets for Robinson, who copped a bit of stick from the Aussie pundits afterwards for the way he behaved, and certainly his send-off of Usman Khawaja was not very savoury. But I'll tell you what, I get people's point when they say that Robinson needs to shut his gob and let his cricket do the talking. But for other people to say that, I mean, they weren't exactly shrinking violets themselves. A wicket apiece for Moeen Ali and Joe Root. Ali, of course, had some problems with his finger. I believe there was some sort of a cut or a blister. It didn't stop him from picking up the wicket of Travis Head, who, of course, had scored a 50 in the first inning, started with a century in the World Test Championship final, and could also have taken the match away. But we will talk a little bit later about his about him when we go to the preview for the second test. Ben Stokes coming back to bowl, bowled manfully, 7 overs, 9 runs, 2 maidens, and the all-important wicket of Usman Khawaja, bowling him just when Khawaja looked set to have another big innings to his total. But with his match aggregate of 206 runs, holding the innings together with two fine innings, both contrasting, you would say, he was well deservedly awarded man of the match, despite the claims of Nathan Lyon with 8 wickets in the game and that wonderful hand with the tail, and also Pat Cummins with that match-winning 44, and also his 4 wickets in England's second innings. So obviously, this particular game will talk about the merits and demerits of Bazball, and we have seen that Bazball has brought about some terrific results because people have not really been able to predict what sort of approach that England would have, and you know, we're going to talk a little bit about as you've said, Hassan, they do know how to pull off a comeback, and we will talk a little bit about the pitch right now. It was certainly a pitch which looked really good for batting. So when you win the toss, you obviously want to bat and score as many as you can, even if what was really interesting was, despite an early wicket of Ben Duckett, the Aussies weren't really quite able to bowl that well enough to take too many wickets in clumps, and Joe Root pretty much had a serene innings. And even when there was a little bit of trouble up ahead with Harry Brook not quite succeeding, Root and Bairstow, and of course Stokes failing, Root and Bairstow really took the game to the Aussies later on. It was probably that sort of a pitch which would aid the spinners a lot more. But while Nathan Lyon was successful, Moeen Ali and Joe Root bowled well in patches, but could have done better. You can't really expect much of the part-timer Joe Root, but Ali coming back into the team, I'd say he had more of a mixed game, so to speak. Really coming in as a replacement for left-arm spinner Jack Leach, who, of course, was ruled out of the series because of stress fractures in his back. And I understand you don't want to talk about Bazball, but obviously it is the elephant in the room. And I will say right now that Bazball made a couple of tweaks which might have made the game unfair. Moeen could have made a huge difference. Well, he should have in theory, but I think the finger injury also probably hampered him in the second innings, and we will talk a little bit about him later on. I'm not too sure what those tweaks are in a way. All they're basically doing right now is just being a lot more aggressive and waiting for the bad balls and just, hitting them at them and trying to hit at them. And if there are some balls which are meant to be hit, just, go for them. And they have sort of brought about dividends. Of late, of course, I think teams have been able to figure them out. New Zealand were able to beat England, albeit by the skin of their teeth, with James Anderson gloving Neil Wagner to the wicketkeeper, Devon Conway, I think it was. Yeah, it was Devon Conway, to lose by 1 run. What a match that was. And, there will be some tests lost, but when you compare what's happened now with how things were when Joe Root was captain, we couldn't even buy a win at one stage, and the cricket was ultra defensive. The thing about Alistair Cook and Joe Root as captains is that they were very defensive in their approach. And Cook was never really the type of captain who could be trusted to be tactically smart the way the likes of Nasser Hussain and Michael Vaughan were. But even Strauss is also quite defensive in his approach. But with this new approach, obviously, Stokes and Brendan McCullum have shown that they do have their finger on the pulse of the game. There will be a few defeats, but I would say that instead of trying to go gung-ho all the time, there has to be talk of a little bit of pragmatism involved. You need to know when to go gung-ho and when to sort of say, whoa, not today. And that is something that Stokes will continue to learn, and McCullum will continue to learn as they go along. And one would think that despite not being captain anymore, Joe Root will have a role to play in in these proceedings, especially offering Stokes a little bit of advice going on in. And of course, when you've got Anderson and Broad, who have also served as vice captains for England in the past, Stokes does have a good leadership group under his wing. I really don't know if Ollie Pope is necessarily the man to take over from him in the long run. He will need to play some more games and really get some more, security in his game before he could really be considered, in my opinion. But it is what it is. And a message from Chelsea fan, please get the likes up to 20. Let's go. Very, very close. England could utilise Ollie Robinson to get an advantage over Australia in the second test. He is a great player, so working on him will be essential. Listen, there is potential in the guy, okay? He is a good talent, there is no doubt about it, but he does have a lot of work to do on his game to really make sure that he builds on that the way other bowlers have been able to do. Stephen Finn, for me, will always be a very big disappointment. Injuries really robbed us of what would have been a magnificent bowler, but it is what it is. Good test match. Fair play to Australia for the win. Absolutely. Daz Reynolds, welcome to the chat and good to have you on. And I realize that we're waiting for Hanno right now, so I'll probably just run through all of these chats and then we might possibly do some other cricket news as well. And the question from Daz is, what would I do if I was Stokes tomorrow? The one that the Quicks could do quite well. Well, here's the thing. We are going to talk about this in the preview of the second test, but I can some of you will have read about it, and I will let slip that Moeen Ali has in fact been dropped. So, I did call it because with a pitch like Lord's, with the slope, possibly aiming the seamers, it doesn't really make that much sense to play another spinner in there. I know that Ali is a more than decent lower order batsman, but he hasn't exactly fired with the bat. So it could very well be that England go in with a full seam attack, and they will go in with a full seam attack. And if they want some spin, just get Joe Root some part-time off tweakers and maybe hopefully try and pick up a wicket or two with a sharp return catch. It must be said, of course, that Root did have some more chances off his bowling, which I think one of them has to be counted as a bit of a drop. Another one sort of was burst through his hands, a misfield here and there. But his off-spin bowling can cause a few problems, so he might be counted on by Stokes to turn his arm over for a few tweaks. And that is, of course, what it is. Big up Chelsea fan. Big up Daz. Good to see some more camaraderie right now. And before we go to the second test preview, let's take a look at some other cricket news. Of course, we were dealing with the World Cup qualifiers that have been taking place in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, of course, we will sort of take a look at what's been going on today. I can tell you that a result from today is that Sri Lanka defeated Scotland by 82 runs. Scotland have been doing really well in this qualifying tournament, and they obviously beat Ireland and several of the other teams that were in their group, coming up against Sri Lanka, who are really serious about qualifying for the World Cup. And with the team they have, it was always going to be a little bit difficult. We take a look at the Sri Lankan scorecard. Dasan Shanaka getting out for a golden duck didn't really help, but some decent 50s from Pathum Nisanka and Charita Solanka. Dimit Karunaratne, the test captain at the top of the order, was bowled quite early. 245 seemed like a below average, but not too bad a total. Chris Soule, Chris Greaves, and Mark Watt and Alistair Evans basically sharing all 10 wickets. There were 8 bowlers used by the captain, Richie Berrington, but Greaves was the one who ended up, wiping away the middle order and then, finishing off the tail with the wicket of Lahiru Kumara, ensuring that Sri Lanka were bowled out before their 50 overs. But sadly, Scotland's innings got off to a poor start with Matthew Cross getting out quite early, the wicketkeeper and opening batsman. Chris McBride doing reasonably well with 29 off 38, but he should have kicked on a bit further. Brandon McMullen, who has done well this tournament, getting out quite early. And Richie Berrington, the captain, failing. A fine innings of 56 from Chris Greaves, 4 wickets in the 50, would have earned him the man of the match honours, but sadly it wasn't to be. And the other batsmen coming in, playing a few shots, hanging around for a little bit, but Greaves, of course, finishing not out with a fine century off only 40, half century of only 41 balls. 3 wickets for Theekshana, the spinner, off his 10. A wicket apiece for Kasun Rajitha, Lahiru Kumara, and Dasun Shanaka. A wicket maiden for the captain. Doesn't quite make up for the golden duck, but whatever. And the star spinner, Wanindu Hasaranga, um, taking a couple of wickets with his off spinners. And so it was a fairly comprehensive win. And so Group B sees Scotland taking 4 points with them into the Super Six after beating both Scotland and Oman. Oman securing qualification for the Super Six. Yes, they've lost. They've lost to Scotland and Sri Lanka, but beating Ireland and beating the UAE, who, I mean, Ireland certainly had a very, very poor qualifying tournament. They were able to beat the UAE to avoid the wooden spoon, but Ireland will definitely look at this as an opportunity mix. Scotland can certainly look forward to trying their best to do well in the Super Sixes, but the opposition will be tough. They will come up against the likes of Zimbabwe, the Netherlands, and the West Indies. The West Indies having it very tough right now, of course, and we were discussing this in an earlier episode of Off to the Boundary. In fact, it might have been the day before yesterday, or yesterday, I don't quite remember. But this is pretty much how this has gone about. But I see Hanno has come back. Boet, how's it? Big up, good to see you. And you're just in
Yes.
time. Now we can start the preview to the second test, but how have you been? And are you looking forward to the second test?
Yeah, I'm really excited for the second test. Can't wait. Yeah, thank you for quickly filling in. Yeah, sorry, just had to quickly do something. It took a bit longer than expected,
It
but yeah.
always does, but it always does. It always does. It always does. And now that you are here, you are welcome to take over, or shall we continue as is?
I just quickly want to give my thoughts on the on the first test.
Yeah.
Um, so first innings again, and of course England declaring on the first day with 393. Some people are going to say that they should have declared a bit later, especially with Root playing such expensive batting thing. So yeah, there is something to that, and you could also say that it was fair because they wanted to have a crack at Warner and them. So yeah, um, that's that. Australia. The innings was good, but it was so slow. Until of course they got bowled out. Um, we will come to the second innings where I talk on Smith and them. Then of course England second innings. Start off well. It didn't really start off the way they want. Well, it started off good. Then of course rain come. Then they had to play three overs before the rain come again, and those 3 overs. Um, about what 15-20 minutes. That's really it. Then they lost both their openers. Then we saw Joe Root on the fourth day, first ball going for the ramp. And yeah, I think in that second innings, England were a bit too much too attacking. For me, I think, and it cost some of the wickets. You look at Root, he went down the pitch, got stumped. T- but yeah, it is what it is. Really. What else? We saw so we saw um Stokes. He went for of a great ball out base though didn't really get going. Going Brook, he was unlucky. Um, yeah, I think some of their plays were a bit too much, but too much attacking cost their wicket. Now Australia's second innings again for me. Warner, he looked really good. In both innings, before he got out, he looked for me really good. And yeah, what else is there really to talk about?
Yeah,
Of
I
course,
will sort of ask you a question. I do remember saying a bit earlier that when it came to bowling at the tail enders, Cummins and Lyon in particular, we were talking about this when we were doing the commentary for the watch along, and we were saying that the idea of bouncing them out wasn't really effective because all that Cummins and Lyon had to do was just leave the ball and not try and play any inducer shots. But when you were able to sort of pitch it up and really try and induce a false shot, you could have had some success. Granted, it might not necessarily have been swinging as much as James Anderson in particular would have liked. But at least when you have that sort of a strategy, you know that you're not going to let the batsman feel too comfortable. And that is definitely where Stokes missed a trick. I wonder if you agree with that. I wonder if anyone else, the likes of Daz or Hassan or anyone else in the chat would agree with that.
yeah. Look, I was about to touch on that. Look, the field placement towards the end, it was set up for short bowling. You had a fine leg, you had a third man, middle of, sorry, long on, long, long off. You had all those fielders. You had deep backward point and deep square leg. You had all these positions, but yet they were maybe two balls in one over that they did go short. Um, and they did not do that much. And again, we come to a key point on the short balls. Of course, I believe it was Lyon that was dropped by Stokes. It might have been Cummins, but one of the two were dropped by Stokes. That was a
I think it was
key
Lyon that
moment.
was dropped. You're right. It was Lyon that was dropped. You were right.
Yeah, Lyon. Um, he also so Alex Carey was dropped the first time, then caught the second time. Cummins was dropped up to also earlier on by sorry, not by Carey was dropped by Root. Sorry, not Lion. Um we saw Cummins also dropped by Root, but that was a difficult catch to be fair. But nonetheless dropped. We saw a few blunders from a few batsmen, including Steve Smith, including um, Marnus, Labuschagne, and I think those two they need to start firing again. Cause England were lucky. Let's not know. England were lucky. Um, sorry, not England. Australia were lucky, and Australia were lucky because usually, if your two best batsmen in your team don't perform, it's usually you lose the test match or the match. And Australia didn't lose this. I think England going to be very disappointed with themselves. Um, so yeah,
I get that completely. And with the likes of Smith and Labuschagne, we all know just how good they are. And Warner, of course, would be disappointed with his failure in the first innings. Usman Khawaja continuing his purple patch. I believe he also had the distinction of batting on all days of this test. Of course,
yeah.
batting the final few overs of the first day, all day the second day, and then if memory serves me right, he I don't know if he remember if he batted the third day, but certainly on the fourth and
No, no,
fifth.
no. The third day he didn't bat. That was England.
Ah, right. Yeah, you're
No,
absolutely
what?
right.
No, he
So
did bat the third day. He did bat third day. Third day,
yeah,
and
he did,
then
and
yeah,
then the
he did. He
fourth
did.
and the fifth. So yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, for him to be asked to do some work on all those 4 days, he had to have the man of the match award. Nathan Lyon probably would have been the only other person to have had claims of you know, uh, uh, getting that award. If England had won, it would almost certainly have been Joe Root for his
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
century in his batting and also his more than useful spin bowling. And this is going to be a wonderful segue right now into the second test preview. Now, interestingly enough, we know what the England selection will be. The only change that they've made is that Josh Tongue, I mean, certainly it had a lot of people speechless. Maybe maybe Josh got their tongues. I don't know. And you see that they're going to be a lot of jokes coming on here. But
Yeah.
the reason why they opted for Josh Tongue instead of Mark Wood is because Josh was definitely a like for like bowler to Mark Wood, who was, of course, the leading wicket taker in the last Ashes series, but hasn't really been fit to bowl too much. And England are still looking to wrap him up in cotton wool, as it were. But in addition, having only there is, of course, one wicket that Josh Tongue has taken in the county championship, second division for Worcestershire. But Smith had made 30 when the sort of nip backer, really. I don't know if you could call this necessarily an in swinger, but it certainly did nip back in. It struck him above the top of his pad, and he didn't seem thrilled with the LBW decision as he dragged himself off. Obviously, I don't know if there are reviews available in the county system. And he became the first England bowler to dismiss him this summer. And the only other test that Tongue had played, of course, was that test against Ireland, which, let's face it, was not really going to be a real uh, decent preparation for a test series against the world
Mhm.
champions. But he's been brought in, obviously, as the only change for Moeen Ali. So it will be that if England do decide to go for spin, there will be, I mean, Joe Root's occasional part-time off tweakers will be used. So this is the England 11. I know you were quite gobsmacked at the decision.
Yeah.
But do you find some merit in the decision to bring Tongue in,
Look,
or
I don't.
has Josh got your tongue too?
Yeah, just as got my tongue calls. Absolutely have no clue um who this guy is. For me, I think it almost sounds like it's a complete newbie, almost to the test environment. Of what you just told me, played a few test matches here or there to come into a second innings to into as a series where you 1-0 down. You're playing one of the biggest tests because England loses, let's face it. Their backs are against the wall. You're playing at one of the biggest grounds, if not one of the most famous grounds. It's at Lords. It could be trouble. But I'm going to use a really good thing. Um, uh, um, really um good thing that some fans will like, some other fans won't like, and is to say that is basketball for you. That is basketball for you. This lineup throwing Josh Stang in there, something doing something unexpected, something that they don't expect. For me, I think England they probably needed. I don't know why England announced their lineup the day before. Because imagine at that toss, England announced their lineup, and the Australian players, the Australian coaches here, they're named Josh Tang. How do you think they're going to react? Like they have prepared the whole week for Chris Wokes. How are we going to face Chris Wokes? How How can we stop crosswalks? Then you bring Justin. I think that would have been fun to see their reaction, but it has been announced the day before. Look, some people are going to ask questions at this England 11. You see, one of them raised a good point. I don't know if this true. It's true. five seamers who all bowl the same pace. Um, Someone joking around. Nice one now owns the real 11. Um, Australian fans saying, yeah, I'm very glad not to see folks. Of course, that is a key point base though. Dropped a few catches, but also took a few blinders in the test match. As an England fan, Manny, of course, you watch folks way more than me. Um, what do you think, think folks or Bairstow? Because I think both have the compliments. I think Bairstow is really good, with the bat. Is really good catching, and he's almost one of the the, the big guys that are to do with basketball. He is almost one of the founders of basketball, Johnny Bairstow. So, Chris folks, did he maybe need to come in?
Yeah, that's Ben, folks, by the way. I know what you're talking
Sorry.
about, the reserve wicketkeeper. And look, when you make a decision to sacrifice the um, off spin and batting of Moeen Ali for someone like Josh Tongue, who will be coming in as a number 10 batsman and express pace bowler, you cannot afford to lengthen the tail. Now, in saying that, Ben Folkes is a more than decent Test batsman who has a couple of centuries and 450s, batting quite low down the order. But I think you've said it perfectly that with Bairstow's affinity to baseball and the way he's able to play, it just makes a lot more sense, quite frankly, to just stick with the usual batting lineup. Now, I I remember, of course, Bairstow dropping a few, but as you said, he also took a few blinders. It's a little bit of a tragedy that you don't really seem to get the classical wicket keepers in that sense of the word who prioritize their keeping ahead of their batting, but also bat really well. Instead, you've got some batsmen who double up as wicket keepers. There have been times when Bairstow has been denied the gloves and folks has been given the gloves so that Bairstow could play as specialist batsman. But now you're in a situation where you need all the batting that you can get. So it really makes some better sense right now to keep the gloves with Bairstow. And if Bairstow does suffer a poor run, then I'm pretty certain that you know folks will come in because again, as a wicketkeeper, you can only catch what comes your way. And Bairstow has taken a few blinders, but he has dropped a few. But I think he'll be looking to try and put all of that right and make sure that he concentrates a lot better. And
Yeah.
yeah, so Bairstow ahead of folks is pretty much a non-issue. You have to stick with the better batting lineup. And I'll tell
Mark
you
Wood.
what, though. Yeah, I'll tell you what. You mentioned that Australia were planning, trying to prepare for, coming up against Chris Wokes, but I think they also, in a way, had Mark Wood at the back of their minds.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what. Warner and Labuschagne are going to, and Khawaja, and certainly Labuschagne and Smith are going to have a lot of practice against, Mitchell Stark with his express pace. So again, we still don't know if Mitchell Stark will come into the lineup. I remember him
Yeah.
saying if he gets picked to play at the Lord's Test, it would be magnificent. If not, he'll still have a good day because the lunches at Lord's are top notch. But if he comes in and bowls and is asked to bowl, he's going to have to get his line and length absolutely spot on. Because I did mention that Boland was quite expensive and knocked out of the park, but certainly the way he was able to bowl in the World Test Championship final and the way he bowls right now, sort of not really. I wouldn't necessarily sort of compare him to Matthew Hoggard in a way or Paul Rifle, but you don't see too many, fancy tricks from him. He's sort of the shop floor sweeper who cleans up at the very end, just like Matthew Hoggard was. And Hazelwood also bowled quite well, but I think Hazelwood might end up being sacrificed for Stark, or it could very well be that Boland finds himself out of the 11 because Australia are going to want to go in really, really hard. And Hazelwood and Stark together should be able to provide that level of incisiveness and oomph that Australia might not necessarily have if Stark isn't in the team. Now, when it comes to the batting, obviously, there will be a few questions asked about Labuschagne and Smith, who didn't do quite well. Warner still does, in the back of his mind, know that he needs a big score because he can't just keep, chipping in with a nice knock and getting out later on. And especially with caughgt playing so well, there will be some pressure on them. So it is going to be quite interesting to see what the team selection is, and I think Australia have done well to, delay their selection until the morning. But we will find out, obviously, soon enough who will be picked to play. And I'll tell you what, they're not going to have too many fears about necessarily facing Josh Tongue because, look, his returns in county cricket have not really been the best. And if we take a look at his performance in the test against Ireland, we'll sort of take a look and see how he did. He will obviously try and I just want to take a look at his record, his performance in that test, and see how well he did. He's played one test, and he did, of course, take 5 wickets for 106 in that innings. But let's put it into perspective. It was Ireland, and they have talented batsmen, but they just weren't able to quite apply themselves. They should have beaten them by an innings, but they failed to do so, really. And if we take a look over here, Tongue, of course, had 5 wickets in the second innings, but in the first innings, he struggled, didn't get a wicket at all. So he strikes me as being someone who could very well be up and down a little bit. And obviously, the fact that in the second innings, Andy McBride and Mark Adair were able to really turn on the afterburners with 5 innings of 80 odd to avoid an innings defeat, that is something that Australia could try and prey on in a way, because not much is known of Josh Tongue, how he'll be able to adapt to things. But I'll tell you what, England normally have this habit of not really wanting to necessarily try and go back to the future to pick their squad. I think Ali has pretty much been an exception to the rule in recent years. But with a nice South African connection, of course, there was this batsman who was picked for the final test of the 2009 Ashes series to play at the Oval. I believe that was the series decider. There were calls, of course, for the likes of Mark Ramprakash and Rob Key to come back into the lineup. Ramprakash, of course, doing magnificently well in county cricket and also winning Strictly Come Dancing, proving that his coordination was probably better than ever. Rob Key also did quite well in county cricket. But this guy, who was playing for Warwickshire at the time, made his debut in that match, scored a century, and England went on to win that test. The batsman's name? Ian Jonathan Leonard Trott from Cape Town.
Yeah. Look, I don't like the likes of KP that have played for, that were born here and then played for England. But I understand most of it, but I don't like it. Especially KP. But before I talk more about the Aussies and what they really might be, lots of people here in the comment section asking for Mark Wood. I think he's also probably one. Forgot about him. And then one comment here from says replace Brook with good wicket keeper. That's, I think, maybe you could have made it swap out the Brook, or I don't think Pope, as he is of course the vice captain, but to put in maybe Brook take him out, put folks in, and then you can base it off folks as keeper, and then you have an extra bat. Well, you don't have an extra batter, but you can have both Basil and folks in the team.
I wouldn't mind having both Bairstow and Folkes in, because Folkes is a quality wicketkeeper, and as we've seen, he's also a very, very good lower order bat. Bairstow playing as a middle order batsman would add some beef, but with Pope not really distinguishing himself in the test, I wouldn't want to keep him in the team just because he's the vice captain. If the vice captain has to be dropped, so be it. I mean, take a look at with a South African connection, of course, Mark Boucher, who was vice captain under Graham Smith, but also found himself dropped at times and had to work his way back into the team. So if it's the case that, and let's not forget, Brooke actually did come good with a 46 in the second innings, but obviously got out. But he seems to be one person who can be counted on to score some more runs, while Pope, despite that double century against Ireland, come on, it's Ireland. Ireland and Australia are chalk and cheese. We all know that. So if you had to drop a batsman to bring Folkes in, I would sooner see Ollie Pope dropped. Ben Duckett will be a very lucky boy because he hasn't really fired so far. You can't really judge people based on one test, but I take a look at the opening combination, for instance, and I think we're going to need a solid opening partnership between Crawley and Duckett, or at least some bigger contributions from the number 3 if we are to do very well. And if it's the case that we drop Ollie Pope, then that means bringing Joe Root up to number 3 and then having Bairstow and Folkes sandwiched in there. So I actually wouldn't mind bringing Folkes in personally if it means bringing in a very, very good wicketkeeper. But for now, though, I trust Bairstow to do a good job behind the wicket, and Pope is going to have to make sure that he comes good as well because he will be under pressure, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Again, question marks around Crawley and Duckett. I think Duckett, is a better one. Crawley, look, it's a tough call with Crawley. But we have seen some improvements. Yes, a funny comment on the post. Wasn't Ollie Robinson enough that you needed to add another tongue to the team?
I love that. I love that. I love that.
So yeah. So
well, I'll tell you what, Stuart Broad was not best pleased at seeing his status as the Aussie's most wanted or hated English cricketer being taken away from him. But Ollie might need to pipe down a bit,
Yeah. I don't like Bairstow's keeping performance. Well,
I understand, Zane, but look, he has taken he took some blinders in the match. He dropped a few sitters up and down. I trust him though, and we need England needs his batting. And
so, one thing we didn't touch on about is the depth in the batting. It's not really deep. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 batters. It's not that deep really. So you're hoping Stokes or Bairstow stays with Broad, Robinson, Tongue, and Anderson. Most likely, you're hoping one of them.
The big tragedy about Stuart Broad is that there was actually a period in the middle of his career where he was looking really good with the bat and potentially becoming a really good all-rounder. And he was scoring a few Test centuries. Yes, of course they were against Bangladesh, but still, you've got to I mean, I can't be a hypocrite and say that the opposition was poor for the likes of Josh Tongue and Ollie Pope and say that Stuart Broad should be credited for scoring a century. But still, there were some promising signs that he was proving to be a really, really dependable lower order batsman who could certainly hit the ball very well, very sweet on the offside. I mean, despite bowling right arm, he bats left-handed. So he certainly looked very good. Almost shades of his father, Christopher Broad, who was an opening batsman for England and who later, of course, became a match referee. And I mean, obviously, he only had the one Test century, that big innings of 169, and 13 50s as well. Certainly showed some signs that he could apply himself. But then, as as time went by, he started getting out in some really, really ridiculous ways. He just seemed to not really want to apply himself that much as a batsman anymore. And I think he's pretty much focused more on bowling. And it still worked out well for England. He's 12 wickets away from the magic 600 figure. I would back him to break that barrier in this series. And of course, 36 years old, he might still have 2 or 3 years left in him, because if Anderson retires very quickly, and there's no way that England can afford to have Stuart Broad retire along with him, but there does need to be more people brought into the but more bowlers brought into the England lineup and not allowed to just break down or fade away with injury or what have you. And I think the likes of Chris Wokes and maybe Mark Wood, if he gets his fitness right. Jofra Archer is still very promising, but sadly that poor fella is out of contention. I hope he will maybe recover in time for the World Cup, but it will be a long, long shot. And yeah, so back to your question about the batting. It's not very, very deep. They do bat until 7, and Broad can still, if he's willing to, certainly hang around a little bit and hit a bit. And of course, you can always trust the tailenders to bosh a few boundaries near the end here and there. But I wouldn't necessarily be too worried about the batting as long as Root and Bairstow and company are in good form and they can continue to bat well. But a lot of pressure, as you said, will be on Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett and definitely Ollie Pope. They need to really make their opportunities count. No excuses. And it is quite sad with another South African connection. I would really have loved to have seen Keaton Jennings be brought back into contention, but maybe his style of batting isn't really suited to the type of style that England want to play these days. Ah, well, England's loss is Lancashire's gain. And a piece of trivia, of course, Keaton is also the son of Ray Jennings, who was the famous South African wicketkeeper for the Transvaal team in the apartheid days, but sadly was deprived the opportunity to play international cricket due to the apartheid years. And with Keaton's mum being English from Sunderland, Keaton went on to represent the England Test team after, of course, being the South African under-19 captain. So I'm sorry, Hanno, I'm really, really irritating you, but these things have to be mentioned.
Yeah, it has to. Chasson says, come on, England, you have to win this test. Also saying, don't worry, Australia, we are ready for you tomorrow. Yeah, he is, but yeah. In today's world, it would have been bold. It would have been. I think if he would have played in this era, he would not survive. Personally, I think. Keeping it at like percent, and please do.
I disagree on KP. I think he was built for baseball.
Yeah, I think the bowlers now will get him out spray.
Well, I mean, now he's too old, yeah?
That's what I think. So, yeah, let's talk Australia. Of course, we don't know their lineup, but I think it's going to be the same lineup almost. But first, do you think Stark needs to come in? And if so, who do you replace him with?
Yeah, we've been talking about this, Hanno, and I remember watching taking a look at the scorecard and seeing how Boland was actually quite expensive. He was, of course, hit out of the park in the first innings, and England should have scored more, only for Stokes to declare at that time. I still believe he shouldn't have declared. He should have just let them bat till the end of the day's play and then declare overnight, because that would have added about maybe 30 or 40 or even 50 runs to the total, which would have made a pretty big difference in the final analysis. But here's the thing about yeah, I'm sorry if I'm stammering a little bit, but the thing about Scott Boland's performance, the thing about Scott Boland. The thing about Scott Boland is that he's the type of bowler who, as I've said, I compare him to Matthew Hoggard and Paul Rifle back in the day. more of the shop floor steward who sweeps everything up and doesn't try anything fancy. There is going to be a role for him to play, and if he can certainly get the ball to swing on that surface, he will be good. It'll be difficult as well because I thought Josh Hazelwood certainly bowled quite well, and he was able to get the wicket of Stokes very early in England's first innings, which was very, very helpful. So it's a tough call. It's a very tough call. And I suppose if you want to talk about batting depth, Sark also does have the ability to bat a bit. Boland also proved as a night watchman that he's more than capable. So I suppose for all-round purposes, if you want to make sure you lengthen the batting a bit, then invariably Hazelwood will have to make way. And it will remain to be seen if Boland can, get his line and length right and really add a lot more, because his type of bowling will certainly be useful. And Stark, with his express pace, if he comes in, will also have to get his line and length right. It could very well be that they end up going in unchanged, which means the batsmen are safe for now. But I tell you what, Smith and Labuschagne definitely will have to look over their shoulder, and they will certainly be expected to do a lot better in the second test. Smith, in particular, was very disappointing, and I believe this. I don't know if this upcoming test will be Smith's 100th. It might be the third test, but yeah. So Smith, of course, will be under pressure. But as far as the bowlers are concerned, I would expect them to drop Josh Hazelwood and bring Mitchell Stark in, so that you have an attack that can take advantage of the slope at Lords. And of course, Nathan Lyon with his off spinners will be expected to play a very big role. And if Cummins decides that he wants to have a bit of leg spin, bring on Stephen Peter Devereux Smith for a few leg tweakers.
Yeah. I get what you mean about maybe not changing it. I would change it personally. I would take out Boland personally. I think Stark, it can get double the runs that Boland can, and we have seen that Hazelwood, especially on a pitch that swings, is very deadly. I think Hazelwood, Stark, Cummins, and who else is there? Was Lyon? Yeah,
Nathan Lyon, and of course Steve Smith with his part-time leg break googly, if they want to have some.
So
yeah.
I think those three, the main three Cummins, Hazelwood, and Stark. Stark has that brute pace, and his Cummins, he's got the technical ability, not so much the pace. And Hazelwood, we all know what he brings to the table. He can swing the ball in or out, and he has a bit of pace about him. So yeah,
I get that. And of course, another bowler who could be useful is Cameron Green. I mean, he's more of an all-rounder.
I
but
forgot about him. That is the one I was. Yeah, Cameron Green. Yeah, he can definitely be used if needed.
Yeah, so he has a best bowling performance in an innings of 5 for 27, and he has 26 wickets from his 22 tests. So he is basically in the team more as an all-rounder, and he also has a high score of 114. So I think I get what you're saying. Obviously, Green might be expected to play the sort of role that Andrew Flintoff played for England in series gone by. And obviously, with his height and those big bucket hands of his, he can take a few blinders, albeit, of course, some of them, at least one of them, in fact, have been rather controversial. So, yeah, I do think you have a point. My biggest concern, though, as an Aussie fan, is that Stark will leak runs if his line and length are not right. So Cummins will really have to instruct Stark to bowl to his field and make sure, and Stark in return will have to make sure that he gets the field from Cummins that he wants. So I think you might have a point. Maybe a Boland might end up, unfortunately, getting dropped because he wasn't exactly. I mean, he was a bit too expensive in a way. So Stark and Hazelwood and Cummins and Green with Lyon as the first spinner, and maybe Stephen Smith to come in for a few leg tweakers. Yeah, looks pretty good to me. We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah, we will find out tomorrow. But I think it's prediction time.
Yeah,
Time.
before we do that though, before we do that, I want to get to this
Oh
question
yeah,
from Daz Reynolds, who was here.
yeah.
You did start this, so if we were obviously he wanted my perspective. If I were Ben Stokes tomorrow, the Quicks could do well on this. Lords will generally be a test match, Daz, as I've said, where you bat first and take advantage of the good conditions, and then later on, you can ask your bowlers can find some assistance later on, because most of the Lords tests have been won by runs rather than wickets. The side batting first would more often than not end up winning. And if you're able to get a decent score this time around, hopefully if England bat first, Ben Stokes will not make a ridiculous early declaration. But if you were Pat Cummins, Hannah, what would you do?
So if I was Pat Cummins, I personally I would bowl first. I think the pitch it will be really depending on the conditions. Of course, if it's sunny, then I will bet. But look, I think betting would be the first aim. Put some runs onto the board, see how the pitch plays for your batters, and I don't think the pitch will swing as much going on to later in the days. I think first day it will swing really, but I think later on it won't.
Good call, good call, good call. So win the toss and bat first. I hope that answers your question, Daz. And there was another question that he posted, which you starred as well. Opening bowlers. For me, it would still be Broad and Anderson, the old reliable. I think you still got to give Anderson the confidence to open the bowling and see definitely what he can do. And he's had some big returns at Lords in the past. So, you stick with them and bring Robinson on for first change, and Tongue can also come right in. And so, yeah, I mean, Broad, you don't need to worry about either Anderson or Robinson getting Warner, because Broad has pretty much had Warner's number for a long time now. And yeah, so I'd stick with the old reliable of Anderson and Broad, but it will remain to be seen what Stokes does. It could very well be that he decides to bring Jimmy on as first change and give Ollie and Broady the new cherry first up. Hannah, what would your answer be?
Um, Gonna be Broad and Anderson. Yeah, Broad and Anderson. For me, I think Broad with the pace against Warner, and then Anderson swing with the swing off the ball.
Yeah, you certainly would want Anderson to try and see if he can swing it first up and see if he can take advantage of everything. But again, a lot will really depend on the batting of both teams. Both teams do have some concerns, but I'm still looking forward to what should be a really, really good game. And there's nothing like an Ashes series to really test the mettle of even some of the greatest cricketers who might even struggle.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks a lot, Chelsea fan. So, is there anything else to discuss?
I don't have anything else unless you got.
Not really,
Else.
no. But listen, we also have to make a little bit of a mention here. There was another comment which she starred, and Chelsea fan, thanks for mentioning this. We need to also offer our condolences to Ben Chilwell, whose father passed away yesterday, and of course, Hannah, being a Chelsea fan, of course, will be very sad with it. It's also a sad loss for the football community as well, because when a footballer loses one of his own, we all share the grief. So our hearts go out to you and your family, mate. Take care of yourselves, and I hope God gives you the strength to bear this loss, and may your father rest in peace.
Yeah, RIP to Chilwell's dad. Um, So yeah, I think that's it. Prediction time. Mm, I think Aussies won. I think Aussies won.
By how many
Tight
runs
one.
or wickets? A tight one.
Aussies won by 2 wickets or 20 runs.
Ooh, another tight one, huh? Well, I'll tell you what, Lords' Ashes tests have generally not been as close or as tightly played. I'm going to go for England to bounce back with a win, and it will either be by 5 wickets if they bat second, or 50 to 60 runs if they bat first. However,
Wow.
it does look as though the side batting first will have a better chance of winning this particular test. So, if Stokesy wins the toss, Ben, you know what to do. Get your pads on, get your willows in your hand, and go out there and score some runs.
Money going off a big prediction day. Um. So no, it is fair. It is fair. So yeah, but I think that's that really.
Yep.
So yeah. Yep. Everyone joined the first BF money for doing the first bet for me. So yeah, and we will see you tomorrow again. Last session watch along. As we will do for each of the tests. So yeah, yep yourselves, people. See you all in a bit. Peace out.